Your liver could be failing and you don't know it. This organ, weighing just over 2 pounds, works nonstop around the clock and controls functions that determine how you feel and how much damage your body accumulates over time. It filters toxins, processes fats, helps regulate blood sugar, and transforms nutrients into usable energy. After age 60, the liver can start losing efficiency silently, and that is precisely the problem. It usually doesn't hurt. It doesn't set off a clear alarm. It doesn't force you to stop. Instead, it sends subtle signals that most people mistake for normal tiredness, slow digestion, or things that simply come with age. And that's where the danger lies. Millions of older adults live with fatty liver, insulin resistance, or liver dysfunction without knowing it, because the early warnings rarely feel like a liver disease. They feel like vague discomfort, like low energy, like digestion that's just not the same anymore, like a body that's gradually stopped responding the way it used to. Many people discover their liver was in trouble only when lab results already show accumulated fat, inflammation, or more serious metabolic changes. Fatty liver disease is one of the most common forms of liver disease in the world and is especially frequent in people with obesity, type 2 diabetes, and other cardiometabolic risk factors. Today, I'm going to teach you to recognize the 4 signals your liver may be sending before the damage goes further. And number 1 is one of the most ignored of all, because most people attribute it to aging and can spend years living with it without suspecting what it really means. Before we start, I want to ask you something. After age 60, have you noticed more fatigue when you wake up, heaviness after eating, abdominal bloating? That feeling that your body no longer processes food or daily effort the same way? Write it in the comments, because I want to know how many people are receiving these signals without connecting them to the liver. And subscribe, because on this channel I keep explaining clearly what your body is trying to tell you before the problem becomes more serious. I'm Dr. Cezar Villareal. I have treated patients with metabolic and digestive disorders, fatty liver, insulin resistance, and chronic fatigue for more than 15 years of clinical practice. What I'm going to share today is backed by research in hepatology, endocrinology, and metabolic medicine. And I want to be very clear from the start. This video does not replace a medical consultation or laboratory tests, but it can help you recognize patterns that deserve attention before the damage progresses in silence. Now, before we get into the 4 signals, I need to explain something that completely changes the way you should think about this organ. Most people think of the liver as a filter, and yes, it filters, but that description falls far short. The liver is much more than a filter. It is a chemical factory, a recycling plant, an energy warehouse, and a metabolic control center, all at the same time. It receives what you absorb from the intestine and decides what to store, what to transform, what to neutralize, and what to release. It manages cholesterol. It manages triglycerides. It manages glucose. It processes medications. It participates in fat digestion through bile. It stores vitamins and minerals. And when it becomes overloaded, it doesn't fail with an explosion. It fails with a gradual loss of efficiency. Think of it as the great logistics hub of your body. Everything passes through there. Nutrients, toxins, medications, alcohol, excess sugar, excess fat, hormonal signals. If that hub starts working more slowly or less effectively, you won't always feel sharp pain that forces you to look. What you'll feel will be something far more deceptive. Fatigue, unusual digestion, bloating, changes in your skin, urine, stools, your tolerance to food, your mental and physical energy. And that's the most dangerous trap of all, because the liver affects so many processes at once. When it starts to fail, its signals scatter across the entire body. They don't always point directly to the liver. Sometimes they point to the stomach, sometimes to the gut, sometimes to energy levels, sometimes to the skin, sometimes to metabolism. And that's why so many people spend months or years ignoring warnings that were there all along. There's another important detail. In their early stages, many liver diseases produce no clear symptoms. The NIDDK notes that both fatty liver and early cirrhosis may show no symptoms at first, and that when they do appear, fatigue and discomfort in the upper right side of the abdomen are two of the most frequent signs. That means when your body is already telling you something, it's worth listening. Let's go to signal number 4. Number 4, heaviness or discomfort in the upper right side of the abdomen. Here I want you to pay close attention because this is one of those signals that almost always gets minimized. The person says, it's not real pain, it's not something strong. It's just a discomfort, a pressure, a strange sensation under the ribs on the right side. Sometimes it appears after eating, sometimes at the end of the day, sometimes when bending over, sometimes alongside bloating. And because it's not dramatic pain, most people let it go. But the liver is right there in the upper right side of the abdomen. And although many early liver changes don't hurt, they can produce a feeling of pressure, dull discomfort, or unease in that area, especially when there is inflammation or liver enlargement. The NIDDK describes discomfort in the upper right side of the abdomen as one of the possible symptoms when fatty liver does produce signs. NHS and Mayo Clinic also include abdominal pain or discomfort as a possible sign of liver disease. Think about it this way. If a large organ that normally works in silence starts to become inflamed or accumulate fat, it makes sense that it would generate sensations of weight, tightness, or discomfort in the area where it sits. It doesn't always feel like my liver hurts. Sometimes it feels like there's a strange pressure here. This side bothers me when I eat a lot. I feel a kind of uncomfortable fullness I can't quite explain. Don Alberto, 71 years old, told me he'd been feeling discomfort on the right side of his abdomen for months. It wasn't unbearable. It didn't stop him from living his life. But it bothered him more after large or heavy meals. He thought it was his colon, then thought it was gas, then thought it was just muscle stiffness. When he finally got checked out, findings consistent with fatty liver and metabolic changes appeared. What he had been treating as a vague minor nuisance was a warning that had been repeating for some time. Here I want to be very precise. Not every discomfort on the right side means a liver problem. There can be digestive, muscular, biliary, or other causes. But when that sensation repeats, especially if it comes with fatigue, heavy digestion, bloating, or abnormal lab results, it shouldn't be dismissed as if it doesn't matter. What's important is not an isolated episode. What's important is the pattern. One episode of discomfort says nothing on its own. One heavy meal on one day says nothing on its own. But a sensation that repeats week after week does deserve attention. And there's something more I want you to understand. Many people wait for organs to announce themselves with strong pain before taking them seriously. But the liver doesn't usually behave that way in its early stages. Its way of speaking is much more subtle. So if you notice a recurring pressure, heaviness, or discomfort under the ribs on the right side, don't minimize it just because it doesn't double you over in pain. Because when the liver starts losing efficiency, the next signal no longer stays confined to one area of the abdomen. It starts showing up in something much broader, your daily energy. Number 3, constant fatigue that doesn't improve the way it should. This is probably one of the most treacherous signals of all, because fatigue is so common after age 60 that almost nobody investigates it thoroughly. The person wakes up without drive, does 2 or 3 things and already feels their body giving out, crashes after eating, can't concentrate, needs to sit down more often. The day feels longer, everything tires them more, everything feels heavier. And because this can happen for so many reasons, the liver rarely enters the conversation, but it should enter far more often. The NIDDK includes fatigue as one of the possible symptoms of fatty liver when it does produce signs. Mayo Clinic also lists constant tiredness among the signs of liver problems. And the NIDDK notes that many liver diseases can pass without symptoms at first and then begin to manifest with fatigue or general malaise. Why can this happen? Because your liver participates in processes that sustain your real energy, not just your subjective feeling of energy. It manages the storage and release of glucose, it processes nutrients, it participates in fat metabolism. It neutralizes substances that shouldn't circulate freely. If it starts working less effectively, the body becomes less efficient. And when a body becomes less efficient, one of the first things you notice is that you tire more easily. It's not just feeling sluggish, it's something more subtle and more persistent. You wake up and don't feel fully recharged. You eat and feel slower afterward. You climb stairs and the effort feels disproportionate. Mentally, it's hard to get started. Physically, it's hard to keep pace. Doña Teresa, 68 years old, told me something I hear very often. Doctor, I don't know what's happening to me, but I feel like I don't have the energy I should for a normal life. She wasn't talking about running marathons. She was talking about everyday things, tidying the house, going to the market, cooking, walking a few blocks. She thought it was simply age. And yes, age changes many things. But when we looked more carefully, alongside insulin resistance, there were signs of fatty liver. Her body wasn't just aging, it was functioning with less metabolic efficiency than it appeared. This point is key. The liver and metabolism are deeply connected, and that's why liver-related fatigue doesn't always appear alone. It often comes alongside other signals: a bloated belly, slower digestion, abnormal lab results, more drowsiness after eating, or difficulty tolerating excesses that used to affect you far less. Here, an important distinction is worth making. Not all fatigue means a liver problem, not by any means. Fatigue can come from poor sleep quality, anemia, thyroid issues, depression, medications, sleep apnea, dehydration, and many other causes. But when fatigue becomes persistent and is accompanied by other metabolic or digestive signals, the liver deserves to be on the list of suspects. Because the great mistake is normalizing everything. Normalizing waking up already tired. Normalizing feeling that lunch shuts you down. Normalizing doing less each year because you just can't keep up anymore. Normalizing a body that has become heavy, slow, and hard to move. No, not everything that becomes frequent is normal, and not everything that arrives with age should be accepted without asking questions. There's another reason this fatigue deceives so much. Many people with fatty liver or liver dysfunction also have insulin resistance, excess weight, or lipid changes. That creates a mix of very quiet metabolic fatigue. The body keeps going, yes, but it no longer responds with the same clarity. You notice it in mental sharpness. You notice it in the body. You notice it in your pace. But because it doesn't hurt in a specific way, you keep finding justifications until one day you get tested and realize your body had been sending signals for a while. And when that loss of efficiency advances, the body sometimes starts showing it in a way that's even more visible, not just in energy, also in the way you process what you eat and what you eliminate. Number 2, changes in digestion, urine, or stools that seem minor but aren't always. This is where many people receive a clearer warning and still don't connect it to the liver. They start noticing unusual digestion, less appetite, occasional nausea, feeling full very quickly, or suddenly they observe something that puzzles them. Darker urine than normal without an obvious explanation, or paler stools than usual. In some cases, unexplained skin itching also appears. Mayo Clinic lists dark urine, pale stools, nausea, loss of appetite, and itchy skin among the possible signs of liver problems. The NHS also includes dark urine, abdominal swelling, and yellowing of the skin or eyes among warning signs in more advanced or complicated fatty liver disease. Why can this happen? Because the liver doesn't just filter and process, it also produces bile, a substance essential for digesting fats and for eliminating certain waste products, including bilirubin. When that system starts to become disrupted, changes can appear in the color of urine, the color of stools, appetite, and even the skin. It doesn't always mean something immediately serious, but it does mean the body deserves more attention than it normally receives. Think of bile as part of the liver's output system. If something in that system is disrupted, the body may start showing signs in places where almost nobody is watching with diagnostic intent. The toilet, the skin, the appetite, the feeling after eating. Don Manuel, 73 years old, didn't come in worried about his liver. He came in because he'd spent weeks with unusual digestion, less appetite, and darker urine than normal. He thought he wasn't drinking enough water. His family told him it was surely something temporary, but there was more to it. Lab results showed changes that required a closer look at his liver and bile ducts. It wasn't a simple, unimportant detail. It was the body signaling through a door that most people don't know how to interpret. Here, I want to emphasize something. Darker urine on one day may just be dehydration. An isolated change in stools can also have simple explanations. But when the changes repeat, when they come with less appetite, nausea, abdominal discomfort, itching, or fatigue, it's no longer wise to dismiss them without looking more carefully. And this is exactly the kind of signal that older adults normalize too readily. I probably just didn't drink enough water. Something probably just didn't agree with me. It's probably just age. Sometimes yes, but sometimes no. Your body doesn't always warn you with grand drama. Sometimes it warns you with small, repeated changes that seem too modest to worry about. And the liver, when it speaks, usually does so this way. Number one, more belly, higher blood sugar, and less food tolerance than used to be normal. This is the most ignored signal of all. And also, one of the most important, because it doesn't always appear as a symptom people recognize as liver related. It appears as a sum of changes that seem disconnected. The waistline keeps growing. The abdomen feels heavier or more bloated. Lab results start showing glucose, triglycerides, or cholesterol out of range. Some foods you used to handle well now leave you more tired, heavier, or slower. And most people think all of that is separate. A bit of belly, a bit of elevated sugar, a bit of age, a bit of tiredness. But very often they're not separate things. Very often they're the same story told from different angles. A liver that is no longer managing metabolism well. Fatty liver disease is closely tied to insulin resistance, excess abdominal weight, high triglycerides, and type 2 diabetes. This is where I want you to change the way you think. Your liver doesn't just react to metabolism, it also shapes it. When the liver starts accumulating fat or losing efficiency, its capacity to manage glucose and fats changes. And when that changes, your whole body feels it. Keeping blood sugar stable may become harder. Accumulating fat around the abdomen may become easier. That sensation that certain excesses hit you harder than before may appear. And without realizing it, you start entering a cycle where the liver and metabolism push each other in the wrong direction. Mayo Clinic describes fatty liver disease as a condition strongly associated with obesity, high cholesterol, high triglycerides, metabolic syndrome, and type 2 diabetes. Think of the liver as a central distribution hub. If that hub starts to fail, glucose is managed less efficiently, fats are processed less effectively, and the excess starts accumulating where it does the most harm, around the abdomen, in the blood, and inside the liver itself. And that's where the problem becomes so deceptive, because the person looks in the mirror and thinks they just have a belly. They look at their labs and think they just have slightly elevated sugar. They look at their fatigue and think they just need more rest. They don't see that it may all be connected. Don Ricardo, 72 years old, told me what bothered him most was that every year he felt heavier. He wasn't just talking about his weight. He was talking about his whole body. More belly, more drowsiness after eating, less tolerance for large meals, more difficulty keeping blood sugar stable. He believed these were separate, inevitable problems at his age. When we reviewed his tests and labs, the picture was different. Fatty liver, insulin resistance, and elevated triglycerides. His body wasn't just aging. It was caught in a more disordered metabolism, and the liver was a central part of that problem. This is the point I most want to leave with you today. The liver can be sending warnings long before something dramatic appears. Sometimes it warns you with a waistline that keeps changing without much explanation. Sometimes with labs that slowly drift toward the territory of metabolic syndrome. Sometimes with less tolerance for alcohol, fatty foods, or excesses that used to seem not to affect you much. sometimes with that mix of belly, fatigue, and unstable blood sugar that people accept as normal simply because it's frequent. But frequent doesn't mean normal, and frequent doesn't mean harmless. Fatty liver disease often goes unnoticed for years and is frequently detected through blood tests or imaging done for other reasons. Something else is worth saying clearly. Many people wait for the classic liver signal: yellow skin, yellow eyes, something very obvious. But when jaundice appears, along with very dark urine, pale stools, marked swelling, intense itching, or easy bruising, we're already talking about signals that can indicate more advanced or more serious liver problems, not the silent phase that so many people ignore. Mayo Clinic lists jaundice, dark urine, pale stools, itching, abdominal swelling, and easy bruising among signs of liver problems. The NHS also describes these findings as signs of more advanced liver disease, such as cirrhosis. That's why signal number one is so important, because it appears earlier, because it hides inside things people normalize too easily. More abdomen, higher blood sugar, more heaviness, less tolerance, less efficiency. You won't always feel it as pain. You won't always see it in your skin. You won't always notice it in the color of your eyes. Sometimes you'll notice it in the fact that your body no longer responds the way it used to, even though you're doing more or less the same things. And here I want to speak to you with real honesty and with understanding, because this topic often carries guilt, and guilt doesn't help anyone. If you recognized yourself in several of these signals, it doesn't mean you failed. It doesn't mean everything is lost. And it doesn't mean your body no longer has room to improve. The liver has remarkable capacity for recovery in many situations, especially when problems are detected before the damage advances too far. That's precisely why recognizing the signals in time matters. Mayo Clinic and the NIDDK agree that fatty liver can improve when the underlying metabolic causes are addressed, and that the condition is often silent until it progresses. Let's review the 4 signals. Number 4, heaviness or discomfort in the upper right side of the abdomen, especially if it repeats or appears alongside other changes. The NIDDK mentions discomfort in the upper right side of the abdomen as one of the possible symptoms when fatty liver does produce signs. Number 3, constant fatigue that doesn't improve the way it should, that feeling that your body no longer performs or recovers the same way. Fatigue is a recognized symptom in several liver diseases and appears in official medical sources as a possible sign of liver dysfunction. Number 2, changes in digestion, urine, or stools that seem minor but aren't always. Dark urine, pale stools, reduced appetite, nausea, itching, or unusual digestion can be signals that something in the liver or biliary system deserves evaluation. And number 1, more belly, higher blood sugar, and less food tolerance than used to be normal. A silent combination that very often reflects the liver and metabolism no longer working with the same efficiency. The relationship between fatty liver, insulin resistance, abdominal obesity, and type 2 diabetes is well established. I want to emphasize something important. This video is not for you to self-diagnose. It's so you don't ignore patterns that deserve attention. If you notice 1 or 2 isolated signals on one occasion, that doesn't automatically mean you have a liver problem. But if several of these signals repeat themselves, if they settle in as a new normal, or if they keep getting worse over time, it's worth talking to your doctor and asking for a proper evaluation. Often, simple tests like blood work and an ultrasound can provide valuable information before the damage goes further. And here comes the part that almost nobody explains to you: what is pushing the liver to work worse? What foods, habits, and daily mistakes cause it to accumulate more fat, become more inflamed, or lose efficiency over the years? Because recognizing the signals is the first step. But understanding what is silently damaging it is what truly allows you to change course. That is exactly what I'm going to show you in the next video. If this content helped you, write in the comments which of these signals surprised you most, or which one you or someone in your family has noticed. I read the comments because that's often where the exact question appears that someone else needs to hear. And if you know someone over 60 who lives with constant fatigue, unusual digestion, a steadily growing belly, or lab results nobody explains properly, share this video with them. Sometimes timely information prevents years of silent deterioration. I'm Dr. Cezar Villareal. Take care of your liver, take care of your metabolism, take care of your life.